Well, you guys know what time it is. The car alarm's going off in the background, so it means it's time to podcast. Hope everyone's having a good week so far. We've got RJ of the Eagles, we got Bill from the Broncos, and we have the Washington Commanders, who I think is Sean, if I recall.
It's Sean.
So, I'm sorry that you had to be like me and have just your team name in the title here, whereas RJ and Bill are considerate to my my Alzheimer's and can't remember shit memory situation. But glad to have everybody back. We've had a lot going on the last couple of weeks in terms of free agency, trades, and we're getting into all of it. But first, let's see how everybody's doing. Sean, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling like I want to go back to last year's free agency.
I don't know, maybe not cut a certain quarterback?
Oh, maybe. I got a quarterback. What's his name?
You do have a quarterback now, but I recall you had one last year and cut him, and I believe he might be the star of the free agent class so far.
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to cut him a day early and get no comps for him. So that's how my off season's going so far. That pretty much sums it up.
I mean, bravo. Well, I don't know how you top that, RJ, but how are you doing?
I'm all right. I wish I could get a little bit more trading done, but other than that, I'm pretty happy. I realized that whatever $80-something million I had going into free agency just wasn't enough. And that's kind of sad.
I mean, that money goes fast. And speaking of things that are going fast, Bill, how are you liking Stephon Diggs so far?
Good. I'm curious how this is going to fall for me, but that deal has worked out very well so far.
Yeah, I mean, things just seem to be recycling and falling into place for your team, and you might be the new Ravens, where we looked at this in the pre-free agency, saying, "How's Bill going to do this?" And then we look up and say, "Oh, Bill's team doesn't suck."
Right. Yeah, I basically had Tom Brady ready to go, and then Colts decided to spend all of his $100 million on the guy.
Look, it was either him or Derek Barnett again. And this time, I think Barnett just went for a cool $20 million instead of the 42 or whatever of last year. But anyways, so like I said, we're going to start off talking about some of the free agent deals and spending sprees that we saw so far. By my count, as of the start of the podcast, we've had 276 auctions won. I don't know what the overall total spent is from there, but it's a shitload. And some I think are values, some are probably worth the price of admission, and some are you paid what for who? So we're going to go around and kind of talk about one or two of the winning bids that we were kind of surprised by what the overall bid final was, then one that we feel is pretty well priced, and then if there are a couple of situations in here where we think folks might have snuck one through or gotten away with a bargain, we'll give some props as well. We don't always have to hate. Just a couple of teams we have to constantly hate on, including probably our own. Like, we're not allowed to say anything nice about each other, but other than that, we might find other teams to say some nice things about. So, now that it's Festivus for the rest of us, we can air the grievances, and I've got a lot of things to say about you guys. Bill, what do you think? Do you have someone you want to ding first on here?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who the team is. I can't remember it, but there is a $22 million linebacker.
Denzel Perryman.
Two of them actually that went crazy pricing.
Oh my God, yeah, Perryman.
I think Pat's had
Perryman
one.
And Robert Quinn.
Yeah, Perryman was 21, and then I don't know who got.
Yeah, Robert Quinn was about 22. Sean,
Chief Scott Quinn.
Yeah. So those are, clearly they were like the top pieces on the board at the position, but I don't know. That just feels like a lot, especially whenever we have people that are getting shit on for spending $8 million on the position.
Quinn was the most desirable asset in the free agency class. I actually have no problem with him going for like 23 million. That's perfectly fine. Chiefs didn't add any years, so that's probably the same thing that I would have done. I don't like the Denzel Perryman one.
Yeah, Perryman's just a tackle hog. He's not bringing in the sacks and the big games that essentially win you weeks. Perryman is just not worth 21 million.
I don't mind the guys that get you like over 100 tackles like annually, but just that's a lot. Like that. Typically, like I'd expect to spend 13 million on like a vet that consistently gets 100+ tackles, but I'm not spending.
He was 20. On my roster last year for 12 million.
Yeah, that's completely fair, but that one got a little bit crazy. I think some of the defensive ends got really crazy. Like I understand that we all are pretty competent like owners, and we realize that end is a relatively valuable asset, but like the prices that were spent, because what did Chiefs spend? Chiefs spent 15 million on somebody, did they not? No. Yes.
Uchenna Nwosu.
Yeah. Like I understand he's a.
Oh, I think he froze.
Yep.
Fell apart.
Did I?
Or he froze time.
There you are.
Am I back?
Hello.
Okay.
That's very well said, RJ. We have no idea what you said, but you said it well.
Okay. Defensive ends were expensive, and I didn't like it.
Derek Barnett for the second year in a row. He was 30-something million last year. Then he got 4 sacks during the season, and he went for 17 million.
You take a $14 million pay cut when you only get 4 sacks.
That's right.
Oh God. I mean, Doris Armstrong, I can understand a little bit with Gregory.
Yeah, well, now that Gregory's gone, but that signing happened before Gregory was announced as out.
Yeah, I think that was a lucky signing, but nonetheless, it's still a much better value than Derek Barnett.
And I spent $7 million on some random nobody in New York.
Oh, you talking about Bryce Huff?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of numbers that you can like look at and say they're weird, but I mean, you never know. Like offensively, the one that sticks out to me is Dearness Johnson for $12 million. But I mean, who knows what happens with Hunt and Chubb? You know,
the running back 7 in Cleveland.
Yeah. But I mean, he played well for 3 weeks last year. You never know when that can become valuable. But I don't know. That's the one on offense that sticks out to me the most.
Yeah, I'm looking through.
Tom Brady, like
he's going to be worth everybody though.
For $40 million?
No, he's not. Yeah. Like that's just
if
not worth.
You've got no quarterback.
How do you figure
you've got that much to spend? And I mean, Colts still has $21 million in cap space.
And Colts isn't going to use any of it.
It just, I don't know. If you're fleshing out a team, that cuts off so many opportunities. Spending $46 million on one player.
Yeah,
like even if it is a 1 or 2 year rental, it just way too much.
I get it from a non-contender standpoint, but I guess at some point he still has value enough to where he could probably get moved down the line. I don't know how you move a $46 million contract, but this is going to be a great learning experience for Jags.
All of us.
Who has Allen? Giants?
Yeah.
Giants says.
Yeah, so Giants and Jags, they're both in the 40s with Mahomes and Josh. This is going to be a great learning experience of what that actually has value for. Different names entirely, but still.
It's going to be all sorts of fun for those quarterbacks who are ready for their 5th-year option and need extended this year. So, especially if they make Pro Bowl. So, hey, Falcons, I sure hope Kyler Murray doesn't make the Pro Bowl for you this year because that would really suck. Anyways, yeah, I think there were a couple that surprises that you guys had already called out there. I think there was some really good, and I think you alluded to the one signing for the Armstrong in Dallas. I think there were a couple other good and bad luck signings. First auction with Ray Mcleod going off. I think he's going to land in San Francisco as their return specialist. And they have been crying out for one, and that's a return game that usually does create a couple of good opportunities per year. So I could see Ray being one of those 150, 170 point return guys, especially in an offense like that, where they did use Trent Sherfield, who was kind of their guy there last year in the passing game some too. And with Lance's arm, I think that he's going to end up being 150, 170 point guy. So I think that was a really good signing that benefited well from the landing spot. One that didn't benefit as well is the little over $8 million that the Steelers spent on Will Dissly right before they traded for Noah Fant in the Russell Wilson deal. So sometimes they work for you, sometimes they work against you. I think similar situation with Kenny Boy and CJ Uzoma. Then, of course, the Colts getting Donta Foreman for $8 million right when he gets picked up by, I think it was Carolina. But again, there were a couple of these where, and again, that's just the nature of our free agency. You bid on a player hoping he gets a good opportunity, and sometimes you hit it, and sometimes it's kind of a miss. But yeah, otherwise, I think there wasn't anything that was too crazy. I think some of the stuff is still to be determined, like around J-Ron Curse and some of the other players. I thought there was a corner that was way overpriced at one point, but I think that may have just been a misclick and got
Darius Williams is 2.7.
Wowza. And some that didn't Emmanuel Sanders retire?
Yeah. Or did he retire? I know he's not on the team right now.
He's a free agent. He's pondering retirement. He hasn't actually retired yet. I think he's one of the guys that's not going to officially retire until probably next year.
He has a great opportunity to go to like New Orleans or Atlanta or Green Bay and just have like one last good year.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he goes to something like Green Bay or even Tampa Bay, honestly, for some small contract just for a.
Well, Tampa doesn't need anybody else right now. Like they have their entire offense is back, minus a couple offensive linemen.
You got to fill in for AB.
Oh, that's Scotty Miller.
Oh.
I know. No, I mean, we're never gonna know, right? Like it's all about timing.
Yeah.
You know, and like that's the part that sucks is the timing of it all. But the thing that will never stop surprising me is the fact that cornerbacks still go for over $1 million.
Oh, and I refuse to pay anything more than $1 million. Millions the cutoff for me.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think the only thing crazier than there being anything like $1 million, like I think like we have like an $8 million corner somewhere in the league, but we also have a $3.5 million kicker.
Is that right?
In Ravens, Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker is like $3.5 million.
That's crazy.
I think I got my young ho back, so I'm very happy about that. Yes, despite not franchising him, I paid 1.2 for my kicker. I go to many distances for my young ho. But yeah, I think the one other one of note, and he still needs to get recognized despite the fact that he is not the trendsetter that he was in years past, is Taysom Hill. I think at about a $5 million price point. Somewhat reasonable considering, even though he's already been moved after being bought in free agency. And I forget whose pet peeve this was. I want to say it's Brett's. That if you're trading for a player that just went in free agency, why didn't you just bid him in free agency?
That's my pet peeve too. I think I brought it up in chat a couple times, but I mean, it makes no sense. You're just throwing away picks. Pay an extra $500,000 and get the fucking guy yourself.
No,
well, there's no guarantee of that though, right? Like they could start a bidding war.
Yeah, there are times where I can see it. When you're pretty conscious about the fact that like you have too many picks or you intend on skipping some.
Mhm.
There's no reason, to like start up a bidding war when you can just buy said player for one of your, unnecessary picks.
Yeah.
And I get that totally, but I mean, what we've seen are a second rounder and a third round pick that have been set for
Right.
guys winning the auction. That's just ridiculous.
That's fair. I do think we are not necessarily at the point now, but as we progress a little bit longer in it, I think it's acceptable for those players to start like having some type of value because situations can change. But
Mhm.
like immediately after they go off, if you're spending anything more than like some random fifth,
Yeah.
I'm probably not. I'm not going to be on the side of the person getting that free agent.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. It's if it's one of those where you are capped out and you're trying to go after a player, then I can see going that route. But at some point, think about how much you have to pay to drop cap at certain times. Usually, at some point in the season, you'll need to pay a fourth to drop 8 figures of cap space. So, are you getting that level of benefit by trading for the player rather than just continuing to bid on him? And I mean, I'm coming at this from a position of I don't like spending a lot on free agency, so I'm not the biggest expert on this. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Washington. It's if the situation had time to fundamentally change between when the player was won and when you traded for him, I have no issues trading for the player. But if it's a couple of days or a week or something like that, except for very rare circumstances, there's not enough time for something to have changed. And again, jumping ahead slightly, it wasn't a free agent signing; it was a different trade. The most recent trade, the Colts acquisition of Muhammad. During restricted free agency, he was available for a second. We didn't know what team he was going to land on because he was going through real NFL free agency. After he goes through real NFL free agency, he's able to get the player for said second. So it's kind of, I see as you gain information, making a pick like that where you could have had a shot at them previously. But in a lot of the cases, it's just pay the man instead of paying picks. But I guess to each their own. Okay. Any other bargains that we're seeing from this class here that kind of jump out at you? And feel free to pat yourself on the back on some of these. Just don't tear anything.
The more I look at it, the more my stomach just turns. It's bad. It's really bad.
I'm proud. No, I'm not. I'm not proud of any of my signings. Maybe Giovanni Bernard, just because it was a reasonable price.
Is he still a free agent, or did he land somewhere?
Honestly, I don't even know. I just
expect. I think he's still free.
Yeah, if they played in Tampa Bay, I just expect them to re-sign.
I kind of like your acquisition of Anthony Miller, RJ, and then Rams' acquisition of Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod just seems to be in a position where he starts 2 or 3 games a year. And with the uncertainty that is Baker Mayfield right now for the Rams, having a quarterback that may get a couple of starts there, especially considering Daniel Jones is on thin ice, is not the worst situation to be in. Let's see who else.
See, I was kind of actually on the fence about the Miller, my Miller signing in particular. I like that Malik Turner turned out a little bit better. Before I picked him up, he was the wide receiver 4, and now you can assume he's the 3. But Miller just seems like one of those players that, like, if you look at his previous production, he's had 500 and 600 yard seasons, and things got a little messy last year. But if I recall, he was also cut at some point after free agency, right?
We're talking about Anthony Miller, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know when he was cut, but I know that I really, really wanted him, like really badly. I love the fact that he's going to be the 3 in Pittsburgh with Trubisky. They worked so well together with him in the slot when they were in Chicago. for all of Trubisky's faults, they had a connection, and I really wanted it again, man. I wanted it so bad.
Oh, we'll talk later.
No.
I'm sure he's a great trade extension candidate.
After the bit we just had here about trading for players who just got one. Bill, coming to one of your wins, actually, Equinemius St. Brown.
That was going to be one of mine.
Well-timed win for $3 million. I think there was some rumor about him getting signed to a couple of different spots, and Chicago looks like it's going to be completely up for grabs in terms of where the target's going to go on that one. So I do like that one. I think 49ers may have been a little bit of the prisoner of the moment, signing Charvarius Ward to our 49ers in here while he was signed to the real life 49ers. The $3.6 million is a little bit less than he's making in real life, but as mentioned, it is kind of high for one of our salaries. In terms of some of the others, it surprised me to see Huntley go as expensive as he did. And then in terms of some of the on the cheaper side, I think, again, it's more ancillary and dart throws for a lot of these. Like Jaquiski Tart could be a really good value at $1 million, depending on how the safety situation works out in San Francisco. Josh Gordon always will have a life here, it seems. Mike White's fun continues despite Joe Flacco returning to the Jets. He is on a min deal again for the Buccaneers, so we'll see if he gets to be a golden egg again. And then that's kind of Mario Edwards, I think, is an interesting buy for you, RJ. I think, I like the talent, but I have no idea what his role is going to be in Chicago or otherwise. And then Bucks, I think, I'll just say one last one. Getting Matt Breida for less than $1 million right before it looks like he's going to end up being the handcuff to Saquon. I think that's going to be a pretty strong value, depending on how Saquon's health is and if he even stays with New York this year.
Texans had two consecutive $4.1 million cornerbacks. Oh, good Lord.
I think that there's a couple that stick out as like really potentially excellent value. And then there's like a couple that just stick out as like, why did this happen? And I'll avoid corners because obviously they're a little bit overpriced given the position, but Melvin Ingram for the Jets is $5.4 million. I don't see that being viable. I don't even know that he's still on the Chiefs, and he wasn't very good when he played last year in the first place. But keeping with the linebacker side of things, Justin Hollands went for a little over 8, and then who was it? Terrell Lewis went for just over 5. One of them is going to win the job that Von Miller had last year. It's a question of who. I personally think it's going to be Hollands, but if it's not, that's a bad contract. If it is him, I think he suits very well at an outside linebacker spot. But there is one that really sticks out to me as like, as of today, like really great value, and it's the Patriots getting Trey Norwood for just over $2 million. Unless the draft changes something, he is 100% slotted in right now to be the starting safety opposite Minka, and he played very well last year. But now that Tyrann Mathieu is off the market, I don't know that they're going to upgrade the position. So I think that ends up being a Norwood Fitzpatrick backfield.
So, correction on one of your statements about Ingram. He didn't just have one bad season. He hasn't been productive since he was in his 20s.
Okay. Career.
Go ahed. No. He was productive when he was like 29, but he's 32 now. He's had two almost two unproductive seasons so far.
So not worth what he paid, but
I still don't mind at 5.4.
He said, "Whoa."
Like if he just has like a mediocre resurgence wherever he lands, he's probably worth $5 million.
Okay.
Well, you're going to start making fun of 32-year-old linebackers that may have spent some time or currently be on the Chargers. How dare you?
Well, I think I think I've mentioned it before, but like that's that edge type of position. We consistently see players go deep into their 30s doing it. I mean, typically they don't fall off in their early 30s and then regain some competency, but it could happen. Like look at Calais Campbell. He's gonna play this year. He's 36. He's probably gonna if I'm not mistaken, he's gonna be 37 at some point during the season.
He should not play.
My favorite part about Calais Campbell is I don't know if you guys ever got obsessed with the NFL head coach games back in the day.
Yeah.
He was always a steal at the DN position at the back end of the first round, early part of the second round.
Yeah.
He's one of the few players who's still around from that. That was the Matt Ryan draft, the Calais Campbell draft, the Deshawn Jackson. So I always was like, I got to get Calais Campbell on my team from that. So that's how I always remember him. I know, I'm a huge nerd. Brandon, give us some content here. What do you think? Who was undervalued, overvalued? Who was a good free agent signing?
Oh, geez. I wasn't prepared. I was trying to pull up the app, but it crashed the audio for StreamYard. So you'll have to give me a minute to get to my computer. There was a couple. Jesus.
All right, I won't put you on the spot if you're not ready, but
I'm not ready.
I want to let people you were on, so
Just to apologize, Brandon, I know that I pretty much bid you up on every bid I saw of yours that hit the line.
Yeah. Oren Burks was the first name that came to mind, but then I think you got him for like $5 million. And I was like, I don't know if that was a good value, but I did like his opportunity.
Yeah, it got to the point, and then I think you bid me back up on a couple players, and I just, whenever I saw your name, it was just an instant target.
There was the last bid on Zaire Franklin. We both had like the same amount of money left, minus like $100,000. So I was like, one of us is just gonna have to bulk at some point.
It got up to like 4-something million. Oren Burks I got for 2.3.
Okay, that's pretty good value. Yeah, I think I really like San Francisco linebackers. I feel like they always tend to be pretty productive.
I mean, two of those watchers.
They always get used too because we always have one or two out for an extended period of time. So getting depth play is always a good investment for that linebacking core. All right. Any final thoughts on free agency before we move into the fun part of the conversation?
I mean, I do think it's worth like just saying. I think there was a lot of values probably found in the last day or two.
Yes.
From these flyers for $500K. So I'm not sure who they'll be. Like someone's going to hit. Someone's going to find playing time because of an injury or something, and it's going to be a really impact player. So there was a number of names I was like surprised were still available, even though I thought I was doing a pretty good job myself of like digging through the crap trying to find someone to nominate.
I thought that Deshawn Jackson was a decent gamble at league minimum. I didn't want to touch it for even $50K more, but I do like that somebody at least took the shot.
Yeah, me.
He's been a productive player in this league, so there's a non-zero chance that somebody picks him up and he gets 300-400 yards for the season and is well worth league minimum.
So my plan is he gets one good game, and then I package him with a linebacker, let's say like Kenny Young, for a first to the Chargers this year. So I'm just going to recycle that plan until it doesn't work.
Now he told us our master plan, but it's still going to work anyway. All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes of these podcasts. So where we last left off was about 3 weeks ago. And post-pod, we had a fun little trade go down, which has more implications than I think the teams thought of at the time. So we had the Bengals and the only Washington Commanders executed a trade where the Commanders took a look at his roster and said, you know what I need more of? Running backs. You know what I don't need? Defensive ends. And sent Yannick, Matt Milano, and Pat's 23 second for Zeke Elliott and Zach Cunningham. So, again, the Commanders have the 2019 RB1 core pretty well locked down at this point. So good on you for that. But, I mean, we've got you on. Tell us how this come about and what do you think about it now?
God, I don't even honestly know how it came about. I think I sent some fluke offers to him about Zeke a number of weeks back. We kind of went back and forth. He sat on an offer, I sat on an offer, and then I can't remember who sent it to who, but it looked good. We both accepted. We both had some hesitation as it went through. But in the long run, I'm happy with it. The linebacker I got back, Cunningham, he went to Tennessee partway through last year, and he was a huge run stopper for him. He actually outperformed what they had expected. They kept him on, even though he had a huge salary this year and restructured his contract. And Zeke is 240 points or something last year. And if I don't move him, then I'm happy to make sure that my running backs get 20 apiece every week.
Yeah, I like Cunningham a lot, actually. And the restructure, I always view that, like, if you look at the general players that are restructured, it's built around players that are on teams for a good amount of time for the most part.
Yep.
So it's kind of an indication to me that, like, Tennessee thinks he's worth keeping. I didn't like it that you were getting a linebacker piece there on top of Zeke, but that's just me being a salty division mate.
Yeah, I got to the point where I was sick of Milano as a Bills fan because he doesn't hit the stat sheet. He shows up in games, he makes big plays, but he doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And Yannick has been, consistent, if anything. So
Very true. And this is, again, the fun of these trades because it has been 3 weeks and this has been the craziest offseason ever. Where at this time, Yannick was the pass rusher on the Raiders opposite Max Crosby, and things were looking great there. Now he's the pass rusher on Indy, right next to DeForest Buckner and across from my boy Quiddy. So I don't know which is a better situation or not, but not only have these players moved teams in our league, but they've moved teams in the real league. But I'll tell you what, talking about the next trade here is one that, free agency definitely changed some player values here. So it started out as Emanuel Ogbah, who was a will they sign him, won't they sign him in Miami, and the 107 for Christian Kirk, who's the free agent, and Greg Rousseau, who was a rookie last year and showed pretty well for the Bills. At first, it's like, all right, that seems like it makes some good sense for, the 107. You've got a receiver who should get a decent landing spot and then a good rookie for maybe a vet that may be a little bit overpriced on the back end of things, and 107. Well, then Christian Kirk goes and signs for all of the money with Jacksonville, and you've got Ogbah, who gets re-upped for 4 years in Miami. So it's like, all right, this went from being I can see it to, is the 107 the third or fourth best piece in this deal at this point? Who knows? There's at least an argument for it now. But tell you what, this changed quickly with Christian Kirk getting all of the money.
Yeah, it definitely changed really quick. I still like the 107 side a bit more. Just because Rousseau, premium pick was used by the Bills last year on him. But if you're a Bills fan or you watch Bills game, the Bills rotate out their defensive line all game, every game. He's not going to rack up 10 sacks. He's not going to put up amazing numbers. Kirk, obviously $20-something million a year, has a ton of value, but not 107 and Ogbah value.
And Rousseau's opportunity is even less now with Shaq Lawson and Vaughn. I think there's another lesser named pass rusher they also signed.
Jalen Phillips.
Jalen Phillips, AJ Epinesa. It's crowded to say the least.
Do you use the AJ Epinesa just to piss off Brett? Because I give you full points.
Yes, that is a shot right there, Brett.
Well, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It was Jordan Phillips, not Jalen Phillips.
I was saying it's the second Jalen Phillips.
I wasn't going to call you on it, but I was thinking about it. Yep, and then continuing to move down here, the Bears before the Bears, I finally added a tight end to my roster after letting most of the offseason go, moving the 227 for Josiah Deguara and Baltimore third. Probably paid a little bit too much of a price for Deguara, but frankly, I don't think they re-signed Tanyan. I don't think they have another tight end on the roster that is going to play for them, and Deguara gets me points at the tight end position, and I'd rather platoon it on the cheap than pay for a stud at this point because those studs are going to be really expensive, and there's not really one in the draft that I feel great about going to get. So Deguara, like I said, gives me some stability at the position until I figure out what else I want to do.
Yep, he's been on that team. He knows the playbook. He knows what's going on. He's going to be used in some capacity.
Is Tanyan still on the Packers?
They signed him, yeah. They re-signed him for a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
They did?
Yeah.
Oh, when?
A couple of days ago.
Oh, okay. I don't think they were going to have maybe after they moved Adams, they have some space too, but I didn't think they were going to have space to bring him back, but
Yeah, I think sending Devontae definitely opened up quite a bit of space.
Yeah.
2 days ago, they re-signed him.
Gotcha. All right. Well, calculated gamble that may not pay off for me, but worst case scenario, I have a secondary tight end on that roster.
He still had 300 yards and some amount of touchdowns last year, so it's like I don't see a regression from that. So at the very worst,
going to be out for the first how many weeks?
Either way, we'll see. But the Bears begin their sojourn to acquire the full set of Washington quarterbacks, giving up Denver's future second for Taylor Heineke, and then flipping one of his quarterbacks to make more room for Washington quarterbacks, giving the Eagles Tannehill, Kareem Hunt in the 312 for Autry 123 and the Bears 23 first back. So I'm talking about these together because they both involve the Bears. But RJ, 2 first-round picks to get Ryan Tannehill, Kareem Hunt in the third. What are we thinking here?
I mean, it was a late first, and I'm giving him back his first. Autry has some value, but not some mass amount. So like I think that's a pretty good deal. I paid 1 first for a quarterback that's not going to lose his job anytime soon, and I paid a late first for a productive running back on a decent contract.
It's also a quarterback that's like 30% of market value.
All right.
For a starting quarterback. Yeah.
Oh, and just got Robert Woods too.
Yeah. And completely opens you up for Breece Hall.
Yep.
And to be honest, Kareem Hunt is only 26 years old, and he's a free agent next year.
Yeah.
Is he restricted or is he unrestricted?
He's unrestricted.
Unrestricted, yeah.
Well, the Browns can't bring him back, right? They can't afford any more risk at that on that roster, right?
One of my buddies puts his fantasy teams together by seeing how many criminals he'll say he can get on the same team. So he didn't have Deshawn, but he had Kareem. He has Alvin Kamara. He has Tyreek Hill. Basically, it's if you are of a questionable moral character, he wants you on his team, and it's turned out pretty well for him so far.
Hey, I got a handful of guys on my roster that have had photos taken inside of a courtroom. So
Right.
I will say, so the Heineke deal kickstarted the trade that you guys did for Tannehill, which frustrated me at the time. I was like, I don't know if I think I was great value for Heineke, but knowing that it was going to strengthen your position made me regret it immediately.
Understandable. Yeah, I like the trade. It gave me a little bit more flexibility with a lot of things that I can do. admittedly, I've kind of acquired some aging assets that I didn't intend on acquiring, but they're all still like really good, productive players that have, a few more good years in them. So I don't have the biggest window in the world with like my vets, but I'll give it an honest shot.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the next one here. This is a one of those fun trades where a player starts on a team and then goes through 2 or 3 teams in the same offseason and back to the team he started with. So Darius Leonard started on the Raiders, then came to me as part of the Jonathan Taylor deal and made his way through a couple of other teams, and now gets his way back to the Raiders for a 4th and 2 future seconds with Bobby Wagner. And I believe this was a day or 2 before Wagner got cut. And shockingly, Wagner has not signed yet. So I know that there's rumors flying around there about where is he going to sign and, everything. But people are spending that money, and, checkbooks are starting to get a little tight. So, this deal looks a lot different if Bobby Wagner's not signed, I'd say, in the next month or 2.
I think Bobby Wagner retires at this point.
Yeah, honestly, I don't put a
huge win.
I don't put a whole lot of value even like in Bobby Wagner, even in this trade. Like, it's 2 seconds. Yeah, sure, you probably wanted a little bit more for Darius Leonard, but like he's already been extended and he's no longer like wildly undervalued or anything like that. He's a decent value. So like I don't hate giving up 2 seconds in the 4th. I don't like, sure, it's a little light, but it's not awful even without Wagner.
I remember hating that trade that went through. And that was with Wagner being healthy or being on the team.
Yeah. Raiders won this hands down.
Yeah, you just hate trades that I make in general, so I think that goes without saying. Speaking of highway robbery, picking up JJ Arcega-Whiteside and EJ Smith for a likely early 5th-round pick next year. Looks like it was a $5 million salary dump, but those are nice end-of-roster receiver and linebacker who could pay some dividends, but at the worst-case scenario is $1 million cap hit. So I'd say nice grab there, and if you've got the space for it, by all means.
Yeah. I mean, there's not much more to say than that.
The person who traded for JJ back after his rookie year. It's painful. I let him take him off my taxi, actually, I think.
All right, let's see. Then after that, we're back to the Bears, and this time it's Bill involved, giving up Carson Wentz and the 331 for late 5th this year, and the Bears first that he just got back in trading Tannehill. So gives up Tannehill and Hunt for this first and then another first, and gives one of those first to get Wentz. So realistically, he swapped out Tannehill for Wentz. Tannehill with a much better contract as well as better player, I would say, at this point. But it's worthwhile risk. And Bill, you get picks and get to continue moving things around here. So good on you for that one.
Yeah, thank you. It worked out pretty nicely. I wasn't really sure where his value would fall. I'm glad he ended up in possibly the only situation that got him back into a viable 1st-round value.
Nice.
I think this is one of the scenarios where, it sucks the order of operations that happened here, because I bet you had he known that excuse me, sorry, that Wentz was going to end up with Washington, I don't know, he might have wanted to actually keep Tannehill and not build out the Washington roster, which means sending a pick to me for Heineke and stuff. I don't know. I felt like that was not a trade at the end of the day. That if you look at like all the pieces together, that lined up well.
Yep. All right. Coming back to recent trade for me, probably one of the bigger ones. Moving off of Singletary, Jerry Jeudy, and Devin White to pick up John Franklin Myers, Logan Wilson, and the 107. Cool. Bill, thanks for joining. Have a good night. He had to drop off, but basically giving up offense and a young stud linebacker, but two of those offensive players who are about to get paid for some contract stability in Franklin Myers and Wilson and the 107. So probably some opinions on this one way or the other, but I'm happy with the way things turned out for this one.
Personally, I don't like this one. Not for you, Mike. I'm always a big proponent of proven talent, of which you've got White and Jeudy, and Singletary had a really good second half last year. So personally, I know salary is always in the back of your mind, where with me it's not as much. But I would have kept the proven talent.
Yeah, and again, I get that. It's I like what's going to be there at the 107. I really like Logan Williams in terms of what he was showing at the end of last year and what I should be able to extend him at, being relatively reasonable. And then already making sure John Franklin Myers stays locked up at similar time frame. So one of those things that might not have gotten all I could do, but of the opinion that I'd rather sell a year early than a year late on some of these players. So all good.
Yeah, I like the pieces that you got. I also like the pieces that you sent. Although I'm not a Singletary believer long term. Wilson's like, I think, was he $3 million, sub $3 million? He's balled out in the playoffs.
1.7 right now.
So after extension, like he might be in the 2.5 million range, maybe.
So if I extended him right now, he'd be about $9 million. Based off of his performance last year and the current linebackers. Now, I can extend him now or I can extend him at end of year. I of course, take the risk if I do end of year of him balling completely out and going Pro Bowl and all that fun shit. Or I can kind of wait and see the first 8 games or so, see how he does, and then figure it out from there. So I think that's probably the route I'm going to go here. But nonetheless, gives me opportunity for cheaper long-term linebacker than White, which I think I would have to pay somewhere on the level of 10 to 12 million, plus any escalators for extending them. So again, I agree that the offense to defense probably puts it in Dolphins' favor, but the cost control is something I want to be mindful of, especially considering the $20 million I got to pay Metcalf and others for future years.
Yeah, I think you're just kind of pushing that salary cap problem down the road with the move, which it'll be worth it in 2 years, right? When when you have people to pay, and yeah.
So
Jeudy, I think Jeudy, like I know, has he been moved a couple of times now, like back and forth on your roster?
Yeah.
I feel like he's still undervalued, but he also hasn't proven his true value. But I think a year with Russ will be very interesting to see how that piece looks. I think this time next year.
Yeah, he's been an interesting one to try and trade over the last 2 years, where last year there's definitely a feeling that he was probably in that top 10 player range. So trying to get that value for him just wasn't happening in the league. Then whatever he went for, the league felt, hey, that's undervalued for what he was. And then he got hurt, came back, and did well at the end of the year. But still, I was putting him in packages this year at the valuation of a late first. This is the pre-Russell Wilson trade. And people were like, oh, he's washed. He's not going to break out. They extended Sutton and Tim Patrick, take him somewhere else. And then Russ gets there, and I put him in here, and it's like, oh, he's a young, viable player. He absolutely should be there. So, again, not faulting anyone's evaluation on it, but it seems like he's definitely one of those where if he's offered to you, the valuation is too high, but you see him go for a similar valuation to someone else, and it's like, that's all it took to get him? So, again, that's just what I've experienced in trying to move him.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Enough about my team. Nobody wants to hear about my fantasy team. Talk about Bill, who decided to spend a 5th-round pick that he got in the Wentz deal to pick up Jared Cook and David Johnson. About $20 million worth of salary, and especially in the case of Cook, was a much better idea before some of the signings took place. But again, Bill using some of that cap space and proven assets rather than trying to roll the dice in free agency. Then we have the Bears moving off of Denico Autry for Troy Reader. Any major feelings on that one?
No,
not here.
All right, then Bill's paying a 4th-round pick to get off of the Steven Sims contract, but about $5 million. So can't dispute that. Then we have, I don't know if the Sims was the first, but definitely a signed pieces for player piece. I think this is before the Tampa news got announced of Taysom Hill, Shi Smith, 2nd and a 3rd for Russell Gage. Which I think is working out pretty well for the Chiefs right now in terms of the player, especially at a salary of $500,000 for Gage. But again, I think some of those picks could turn out well for Ravens, especially if he breaks them up the way he tends to with some of these picks.
I think it was actually right after the news. I think that's a steal. I think Gage is a really good value. Godwin's going to be out for a portion of the year next year. I think Brady's going to really like Gage and his jump ball ability. I wish I had took a swing there.
yeah. Brady personally recruited Gage, so he has interest in playing with him. Yeah, I think it's fine value, 2nd and a 3rd for him, and then some other junk along with it.
Yep.
I wouldn't pay a 1st for Russell Gage right now. So I'm not complaining with this.
Yeah, that seems pretty even.
Let's see, then moving on down, after getting Myles Gaskin in a previous trade and having Raheem Mostert sign with the Dolphins, I began a quest to acquire all of the Dolphins running backs. This time moving Rex Burkhead, the 129, and Washington's 2nd next year for Chase Edmonds, who just signed with them from the Cardinals. Again, this hopefully will give me the top 3 running backs for Miami, pending they don't draft anybody. And considering they just took over that San Francisco system, could pay some dividends for me. So I like the upside of Edmonds. I like the stability of having all those Miami running backs. Probably overpaid, but, it's what it is.
Yeah, and Edmonds signed for a lot of money in real life, didn't he? Wasn't it double digits over 2 years?
Yeah, 3 for 18 or something like that.
Yeah, which for a running back, that's quite a chunk of change.
Yeah,
so
that's
I
pretty.
would say that he's going to be their primary back, and now you have all of the backups as well. But yeah, a little bit of an overpay, but to get that backfield locked down, I mean, I can't blame you too much.
I'm not a big fan of Miami running backs, but I don't hate the idea of having the whole backfield, especially because we're best ball.
Right. And my thought there, without again, I'll limit to talking about my team. I think that backfield is going to be hot hand situated, so I might get a RB1/2 performance out of one back, or I might get 2 RB2/3 performances out of multiple of them there. Just the way that I think that Daniel's going to use the running backs in that field. So we'll see if it works out or if it's a complete mess on my side. But hey, they just signed another offensive tackle, so that's good news, right?
Yeah, the offensive tackle, right?
Yep. Let's see. So then we've got Commanders moving Hunter Henry. He had I guess, embarrassment of riches at the tight end position for Alex Anzalone, Michael Carter, and the 227. So a nice little consolidation there. And then we mentioned the paying draft picks for players who just got won in auction. Jordan Lewis was won at $1.1 million on auction. and got immediately flipped for a third-round pick. First off, getting a third-round pick for a corner, you can get probably the best corner in this year's draft at that pick. So hopefully Jordan Lewis is better value than that. But then if you want Jordan Lewis, bid more than $1.1 million.
Yeah, this is painful to see, and I was in trade talks with the Browns back and forth at this point, and I saw this pop up. I'm like, yeah, that's highway robbery, because first of all, he's a cornerback, and second of all, you just got him in free agency, which is absurd.
Yeah.
Two of my pet peeves wrapped into one.
You definitely could get the cornerback one, because cornerback shouldn't be taken in the third round, nor should you be giving up third-round picks for them. You should be letting them walk in free agency so you get extra third-rounders.
Yes.
And that's the only value that they should be having.
Or fourth rounders, but PSA to the whole league. Corners aren't worth more than a fourth.
Yeah.
Yep.
In all honesty, probably 401, 402 should be the first cornerback taken, because everybody, like, you should intend to want to profit on that 4 years later.
Mhm.
And like, nobody should be making like such a bold pick even at the tail end of the third round, like, oh, I'm gonna get exactly what I invested out of this guy in 4 years.
Yeah, but I mean, at that point, you start getting to the dregs of some of the other positions. So you're kind of saying, hey, if I'm looking for productive players, am I going to pick the 10th tier of running back or the first tier of corner? So I can see dipping into it in the third round.
That's fair. If we do have a lackluster draft, or one that just doesn't have the typical depth that most of them do, then I completely understand that.
Yeah, I expect Sauce to go in the early to mid third this year.
That's because he has a great name, not because he's talented.
Yeah, so all the above, but I digress. Browns continued his highway robbery, moving Al Woods and a 407 for Jerry Hughes and some future picks. Hughes, again, part of that never-ending rotation in Buffalo. He's probably going to keep playing until he's Frank Gore's age. Then I swap Tyler Lockett, Deshawn Robinson, and Chandler Jones for Odell Beckham, Foyesett, at Luakon, and a third. Again, Luakon, part of the huge, hugely beneficial spending spree that the Jaguars went on. So I was happy to add him because I think he's going to be a good fit there. And then swapping Beckham for Lockett was kind of a null for me. And then picking up a third for Deshawn Robinson. I paid 2 fourths for him, so he had a nice year and needs to be extended. But there was some uncertainty, as far as I'm concerned, for what his role is going to be there with some of the guys returning to the D line for the Rams. So I was happy to make the deal, but at the same time, Lockett's the most productive player in the deal, so there's something that for the Bears at least.
Yeah, you've been trying to deal me Lockett for 2 or 3 years now. I think it's a slight overpay in the current scene, but I think it'll work out in the future better for you.
Well, I mean, I look at it as Lockett being traded for a Luakon, because you're trading at worst low end wide receiver one for a top tier linebacker one, and like typically you don't want to make that type of offense for defense, but you have an embarrassment of riches at every position, so you can do that. And also you are essentially trading Chandler Jones back for Odell. Like, if you look at it that way, and it's not just like a wide receiver swap for a wide receiver swap, like, it looks a little bit better value wise, because then like Deshawn is like probably not a third, but he fills some of the gaps in like some value disparities in the other two swaps.
Yeah. All right, moving along. The Jets given a fourth to dump another Sims on the Lions, who I think already picked up Steven Sims in a contract dump. So if you have a receiver you need to dump named Sims, call the Lions and send them a fourth, and they'll take him. Then I made too many trades. Gave up Peyton Turner, Zayvon Collins, and the 216 for Daniel Hunter, the 414, and the Bengals fourth. After all the breakup moves I've done, a consolidation move, trying to buy into Daniel Hunter. Hopefully he has his bounce back season with the Vikings. So far, signs are good, but we need him to actually get on the field and show it. But again, I feel like I gave up a couple second-round valuation picks for hopefully at the end that can be worth that first for me.
Yeah, I like your trade for Hunter. Peyton Turner and Zayvon Collins were huge disappointments. And rookies can start off slow, but when you look at their numbers and how slow they started off, I don't see them, blowing anybody out of the water anytime soon. So I like that for you a lot.
Well,
Yeah. The one thing with Collins, though, is Hicks got released from the Cardinals, so he's likely going to slot into that starting middle linebacker spot now. So it'll be a little bit different. I think Turner's still in that turnstile at the end for the Saints, but I expect both of them to do much better this year than they did last.
The last Cardinals linebacker that I liked was, I can't remember his name. He's like 35 years old playing for him. He's a coverage linebacker. It's going to bug me now that I can't remember his name.
You'll think of it.
It wasn't Jordan Hicks last year.
No, it was a coverage linebacker probably 6 years ago.
So here comes a fun one. Brandon, you're still on, so you can talk about this. Broncos getting Jared Cook for a song, now moving him with Mike Purcell, probably to make the salaries work, and the 103 to get Stephon Diggs, Cam Jordan, Bobby O'Keefe, and a third. So we've got Giants who's been building up assets all offseason to come and compete in the NFC East, and moves a bunch of them for the 103. So I have no idea what it's like to be pick crazy and pick starved. So Brandon, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I think our entire division, the three of us outside of Cowboys have gotten pretty strong in the last couple months. And so for me, it's like a bit of a hedge to like keep my roster as flexible as possible. I do like Diggs, but I also don't know that he's going to be in Buffalo long term. And he's already 28, turning 29 this season at $16+ million a year. So my thinking was, at worst, maybe I'm replacing him with the top receiver in the draft, or my perception of the top receiver in the draft. But yeah, it's really more of a flexibility thing. I hated losing Bobby Okereke because he was a really good value for tackles, but the deal wasn't going to get done without one of him or Fred Warner. So that was kind of just the price I had to pay for this flexibility. And then Cam Jordan, I think I got him for a couple of future late thirds at most. So I didn't view it as I was fine with including him in the deal again for this long-term flexibility.
As someone in your division, I was thrilled to see you make this trade. I like the other side a lot better, just because that's probably part Bills fan in me, but you've got a young linebacker who's putting up the numbers he's putting up. Diggs is going to be productive for another 3-4 years, and Cameron, same thing. I think you overpaid for 103, but as history shows, 103 could be the top quarterback in the draft and suffice for years. But personally, I like the other side quite a bit more.
Yeah, I think it depends what happens with 103, because it's possible I'm not picking that spot, and so whatever I can end up turning that into will be interesting. I also think that Okereke, they just handed Zaire Franklin a pretty nice contract So I think he's absolutely penciling in to be more than just a special teams captain that he's been the last like couple years from the Colts side. And I don't think he's taking away Darius Leonard's snaps. So that was also like a hedge after I made the trade. I was like, all right, I'm going to get Zaire Franklin in free agency. And so we had our little bidding war. But yeah, I mean, I obviously liked all three players, and I think they helped me compete more this year. But looking at my roster's window versus both of yours, I was like, it's not a guarantee I'm gonna make the playoffs this year. So that was kind of my thinking.
Gotcha.
Makes sense. To finish things out here, I had another Miami running backs giving Baltimore's likely late third this year for Ahmed, and Seattle's likely early fourth. So move back about 5 picks plus however many comp picks there are to pick up another member of the Miami backfield, which I like the idea of that. Couple taxi theft, me picking up Tommy Togai from the Bears, and the Chiefs picking up Eric Stokes from the Bucs. And then the deal we mentioned earlier, Colts giving up the Bears 23 second for Al-Qadim Muhammad and a fourth. I'm not sure about what I think about this deal. I don't love it, but at the same time, I can't completely hate it because Al-Qadim, in my opinion, puts up good numbers when he's right next to DeForest Buckner. Now has moved to Chicago, where I don't think he's got the same level of talent around him. And now he's worth $12 million instead of, I think, the $7 million he was worth last year. And again, it's just one of those where the situation didn't seem to improve. The price situation didn't seem to improve, especially after you have the trade extend him. So it's kind of like, well, what are we doing with this, and why is it worth a second? So it seemed like Goose was always going to get a second for him since that was the transition tag price. But so good on him for that, and it's a high risk, high reward proposition for the Colts as far as I'm concerned.
I probably wouldn't have given up the second for him, but I don't hate the idea of trade extending him afterwards because he's still going to be a productive defensive end. Do I think he will be less productive in Chicago? Most likely, but I don't hate the player.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan either. I mean, I think it's much too high of a pick, especially for a guy who, I mean, he signed with Chicago for 2 years and maybe $10 million, which shows their level of confidence in him as well. So I think he overpaid.
Ruby. All right, gentlemen, that's been an hour and 8 minutes. So usually that's a pretty good episode for us. Now that we've got some trades happening again, we've got some action in the league, we've got content. It's a great conversation. And now we get to the fun part, the post-pod trade conversation. Especially with 3 of you in the same division, I'm just going to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show as you guys rip each other apart. Maybe I won't do that. Who knows? Anyways, but all thanks for joining. For those who are listening, thanks for listening. As mentioned, if you want to join us for the post-pod conversations and see if you can jump into any of these deals, by all means. It's been a successful endeavor in the past. But, yeah, I think we'll give it a week or so here, maybe jump back into some mock drafts here, both the NFL as well as our league, what we think is going to happen. And I expect some draft picks to change some hands, a few more free agents get signed, and a couple of things to happen before we get fully into draft season here. So, RJ, Brandon, Sean, thanks for joining, and hang around here as we jump into the fun part. And for those listening in, thanks again, and have a good night.
And one last PSA, cornerbacks are not worth more than a fourth.